Ethan had always liked the peace of his small town. He was a single dad, raising his daughter Maya, with as much love and care as he could. They lived in a quiet house on the edge of town, surrounded by fields that stretched for miles. Life was simple, and that was the way Ethan liked it. But that night, everything was about to change. The storm came suddenly. Ethan had been fixing his truck in the driveway when the sky darkened quickly. The wind picked up, and rain poured down like a waterfall. It wasn't just any storm, it was fierce. Trees bent under the strength of the wind, and the rain was so heavy that it was hard to see anything more than a few feet ahead. Maya, who was inside the house, had seen the clouds roll in and was already sitting by the window, her eyes wide. With wonder, "Dad, this looks like a big one," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and worry. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, looking up at the storm. "I think you're right. Better stay inside. Okay?" He walked over to the porch to make sure everything was secure. The wind howled, and the rain came down in sheets. The storm seemed to grow stronger with every passing minute. Ethan felt uneasy, but he shrugged it off as he went back into the house to check on Maya. But just as he was about to step inside, something caught his eye. A figure barely visible through the rain was stumbling toward him. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the storm, but as the figure grew closer, he could see it was a a woman. She was drenched, her clothes torn, and she looked like she could barely stand. Without thinking, Ethan rushed out into the storm. "Hey, are you all right?" he shouted over the wind. The woman didn't respond, her body swaying as she struggled to stay on her feet. Ethan reached her just as she collapsed. Her eyes fluttered shut and she fell into his arms, unconscious. Ethan's heart raced. He couldn't just leave her out there. With all his strength, he managed to carry her inside, shielding her from the worst of the storm. He laid her gently on the couch in the living room, taking a moment to catch his breath. He checked her pulse. Steady but faint. She was alive, at least Maya, who had watched from the window, hurried over to her father. "What happened? Who is she?" Ethan looked at the woman. She had an otherworldly look about her. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her hair was a strange shade of silver. The woman had sharp features, like nothing he had ever seen before. Her clothes were unlike anything he had ever seen, too shiny, metallic, and torn in places as if they had been through something terrible. "I don't." "No," Ethan said, shaking his head. "But she's hurt. We need to help her." Maya frowned. "She looks different." Ethan didn't answer. Was already pulling a towel off the shelf to dry her off. As he carefully checked for injuries, he saw that she had bruises on her arms and legs, but there was no sign of serious damage. She was just exhausted, too exhausted to be out in this storm alone. Maya stood by the couch, watching her dad. "Is she going to be okay?" Ethan sighed, glancing up at his daughter. "I hope so. We'll do everything we can." He stood up and went to the kitchen to get some warm water, and when he came back, the woman's eyes fluttered open. She gasped for air as if she had been holding her breath, and her eyes locked onto Ethan. "Where? Am I?" she whispered, her voice weak but clear. It was soft, almost musical. "You're safe," Ethan said quickly, trying to reassure her. "You were outside in the storm. Do you remember anything?" The woman's eyes moved around the room, focusing on Ethan and then on Maya, who was standing nearby, looking both curious and nervous. "Where is my ship?" she asked in a low, strained voice. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean? We didn't see any ship?" The woman's brow furrowed. As if she couldn't quite understand it, crashed. Had to escape. She seemed to struggle with her thoughts, as if the words were coming slowly to her. Ethan was growing more confused by the second. He couldn't make sense of what she was saying. "You need to rest," he said gently, not wanting to push her. "Too hard." But she shook her head, a look of desperation in her eyes. "You don't understand. They'll find me. They won't stop until I'm—" She trailed off, and her eyes shut again, this time from exhaustion. Ethan and Maya exchanged glances. What was going on? Who was she? And why was she so afraid? Ethan didn't have answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave. Her alone out there. Not in this storm. I'll keep you safe, he said softly, more to himself than to her. He wasn't sure how, but he would figure it out. The woman's breathing slowed, and soon she was asleep. Ethan turned to Maya, who had been quietly watching the whole time. "Dad, who is she?" Maya asked, her voice full of curiosity. "I don't know yet," Ethan said, still unsure of everything. "But we're going to help her, okay? We'll take care of her until she's better." Maya nodded, her eyes full of wonder. "She's like a story come to life," she whispered. Ethan smiled softly, but his mind was racing. He had no idea how his life and Maya's was about to change. What had he just brought into his home? As the storm continued to rage outside, Ethan watched over the mysterious woman, knowing that whatever secrets she held, they would soon be. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the air was still heavy with the aftermath. Ethan had stayed up most of the night, watching over the strange woman who had come into their lives. He had made sure she was comfortable, covering her with blankets and trying to make sense of the situation. Maya had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting on her father's lap, as they both kept an eye on the mysterious guest. When the woman finally woke up, it was early the next morning. She blinked in the soft light that filtered through the windows, and slowly she began to sit up. Ethan was sitting across the room, reading a book, but he looked up when he heard her stir. "Good morning," Ethan said, trying to sound calm despite his growing unease. "How are you feeling?" The woman looked at him for a long moment, her eyes sharp and intelligent, but her expression was distant, as if she was still trying to piece things together. "I am not sure. I am not used to this." "You were hurt," Ethan said gently. "You were in a storm. You're safe now."
Oh.
The woman looked around the room, her eyes wide as if taking in every detail. She looked at Maya, who was still asleep, curled up on the couch, and without warning, her gaze shifted back to Ethan. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice soft yet filled with authority. There was something regal about her, even in her weakened state. Ethan was taken aback for a moment. "I'm Ethan. This is my daughter, Maya. We're outside in the storm. Last night, you collapsed in front of my house. We brought you in to help." The woman blinked slowly as if processing this information. She lifted a hand to her forehead and winced. "I remember," she said softly, her voice trailing off, "but I do not understand." "Why would you help me? You have no reason to." Ethan sat down next to her. "Everyone deserves help, no matter who they are." The woman stared at him, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might say something else, but she simply nodded. There was a strange sadness in her eyes. But it was quickly replaced by something else, something almost like hope. "I am Empress." "Zara," she said, her voice steady and proud, though it held a certain weight. "I come from a distant galaxy. My ship, it crashed. I was fleeing from enemies. Enemies who would see my people destroyed." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Empress," he repeated, his mind struggling to keep up. "You mean you're a queen or something?"
Oh.
Zara nodded slowly. "Something like that," she said, her voice quiet, yet there was a strength in it. "But I am more than just a ruler. I am the last of my line. My people, my empire, at war." Ethan's mind raced as he tried to make sense of this. He had seen some strange things in his life, but nothing like this. An alien empress. War? He didn't know what to think. Zara seemed to notice his confusion and offered a weak smile. "I know this must be difficult to understand. I am not from your world. But you are the first to offer me kindness. That means something." Ethan nodded, though he still had so many questions. "What happened to your ship? Why were you out there?" Zara's eyes grew distant, as if she was recalling something painful. "My ship was attacked. My enemies. They're powerful, and they seek to destroy my people. I had to escape. My ship was not prepared for the journey, and I was forced to abandon it before it could crash." Ethan could tell that she wasn't telling him everything, but he didn't press her. He could see that she was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. "What now?" Ethan asked softly. "What happens to you now?" Zara looked out the window, her gaze lost in thought. I must return to my people, to my planet. Only then can I lead them into battle. If I do not return, all that I have fought for will be lost. Ethan didn't know what to say. He had never heard anything like this before. A war between galaxies? He had no idea how to help, and yet something about Zara's story touched him. She wasn't just a stranger in need. She was a leader, someone who had a responsibility to her people. Maya, who had been sleeping through the conversation, stirred. She opened her eyes, blinking against the morning light. When she saw Zara sitting up, she immediately sat up too. "Dad? Who is she?" Maya asked, her voice sleepy but curious. "This is Empress Zara," Ethan said, smiling gently at his daughter. "She's from another world." Maya's eyes widened. She had always been fascinated by space, aliens, and all things strange, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. She didn't know whether to be scared or excited, but one thing was certain: she wanted to know everything. Zara, noticing the girl's wide eyes, gave a soft laugh. "Seems I am a curiosity." Maya nodded eagerly. "I've always wanted to meet an alien. Do you have spaceships?" And Zara smiled, amused by Maya's enthusiasm. "Yes, we have ships. Ships that travel the stars." Maya's face lit up. "Wow. ... Do you think I could ever go to space? See the stars? Meet other aliens?" Ethan watched his daughter, a little worried about how fast things were moving, but he could see how excited she was. Zara didn't seem to mind. "It's a dangerous world out there," Zara said, her tone turning serious again. "But for those who have courage, anything is possible." Maya looked at Zara, her eyes filled with awe. "I want to go. I want to be like you. I want to help." Zara looked at the girl for a moment, studying her, before nodding slowly. "Perhaps one day." Ethan didn't know how to feel about Maya's enthusiasm. Wasn't sure he was ready for this world of danger and unknowns. But one thing was clear: this was no ordinary day. His daughter's dream of adventure was closer to becoming a reality than he could ever have imagined. But first, Kay needed to figure out how to help Empress Zara. And that, Ethan realized, was only the days that followed were filled with a sense of quiet anticipation. The storm had passed, but the weight of the strange events that had unfolded in their home was still heavy in the air. Ethan couldn't help but feel a mix of confusion, worry, and something else, a curiosity that was growing day by day. Zara had spent the last few days resting and recovering. Maya had insisted on showing her all of Earth's wonders, from the small backyard garden to the nearby forest. Zara, for her part, had been patient and kind, answering Maya's endless questions with grace. But Ethan noticed that Zara's thoughts were often distant. She rarely spoke of the events that led to her escape, and when she did, her words were cryptic, as if she was protecting herself from the pain of remembering. Maya, however, wasn't concerned with Zara's past. She was fascinated by the idea of meeting someone from another world. She would sit for hours, asking Zara about the stars, the alien ships, and what life was like on her home planet. Zara was always happy to oblige, her voice calm and soothing as she painted pictures of distant galaxies and strange, beautiful worlds. But as much as Maya was learning, Ethan was still struggling to understand. He had so many questions, so many things he wanted to know. What exactly was Zara's mission? What had happened to her people? And why was she here, in the middle of nowhere, asking for help from a simple, middle-aged father and his daughter? One evening, after dinner, Ethan sat down with Zara on the porch, hoping to get some answers. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the sky, and the air was cool and crisp. "Zara," Ethan began, his voice cautious, "I need to know more about what happened. I mean, about your people and why you're here." Zara turned her gaze toward the horizon, her eyes reflecting the fading light. For a moment she didn't speak, and Ethan wondered if she would brush him off, as she had done before. Then she sighed deeply and looked at him. "My people are at war," she said quietly. "A civil war. It has been going on for years, and I was chosen to lead them. But my enemies are powerful, and they do not want me to succeed." nodded slowly, trying to process the weight of her words. And your ship, why did it crash? Zara's eyes narrowed slightly, as if the question pained her. My ship was attacked. We were ambushed by a faction that wants to see my empire fall. I barely managed to escape before they destroyed it. Ethan frowned. You said they would destroy your people, ... But why would they want to do that? What's so important about your empire? Zara paused, and Ethan could see the conflict in her eyes. She wasn't ready to say everything, but she spoke anyway. My empire. It's the key to peace in the galaxy, she said softly. We have knowledge, technology, and power that no other species can match. But there are those who fear us. Those who think that if we remain in power, they will never have control. They want to destroy everything we stand for. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just some small-scale fight. This was a battle for the future of the galaxy. And what happens if you fail? He asked, his voice low. Zara's gaze turned distant. If I fail, ... my people will be lost. They will be crushed under the weight of war, and the galaxy will descend into chaos. Ethan let the silence stretch for a moment as he tried to absorb what she was saying. It felt unreal, like a story out of a book. But Zara's pain was real. He could see it in her eyes. You need to go back, don't you? Ethan asked, finally breaking the silence. Zara nodded, her face hardening. Yes, I have no choice. If I do not return, everything will fall apart. Ethan didn't know what to say. Wanted to help her, but he was just one man, and his daughter was the only family he had left. Couldn't risk everything for a cause he didn't fully understand. But at the same time, he couldn't stand by and do nothing. I don't know how we can help you, he said honestly, but I'll do whatever I can. Zara's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his arm. You have already helped me. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. That is more than most would do. Ethan shook his head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it's the right thing to do. Zara smiled faintly, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Perhaps. But now I must ask for more help. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I need to go back to my world. I cannot do it alone, Zara said, her voice quiet but filled with determination. I need your help to get me there. I need your daughter's help as well. Maya had been listening from the doorway, her ears catching the last part of the conversation. She stepped out onto the porch, her eyes wide with curiosity. What kind of help do you need from me? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. Zara turned to her, her eyes assessing. You have a dream of going to the stars, yes? She asked, her tone almost like a challenge. Maya nodded eagerly. I've always wanted to see the stars, to meet new people and explore new worlds. Zara's gaze softened. Then perhaps you are the one who can help me. The journey will not be easy. We must travel through dangerous territories, and there will be obstacles in our path.
Oh.
But if you choose to join me, your dream can become a reality.
Yes?
Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement. You mean it?
I
can really go with you. Zara nodded. If you wish, you can come with me and help restore my empire. Together, we can make a difference. Maya looked at Ethan, her eyes full of hope. Ethan saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire he had seen in her when she was a little girl dreaming of adventure. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the danger Zara spoke of, but he knew one thing for certain. If Maya wanted this, he couldn't. Hold her back. We'll help, Ethan said, his voice steady. We'll do what we can. Zara's eyes softened, and for the first time since they had met, she allowed herself to smile. Thank you. What'll not regret this? And just like that, Ethan realized that their lives, his and Maya's, had just been changed. The decision had been made. Ethan and Maya would help Zara get back to her people. It wasn't something Ethan had expected, but as the days passed and the bond between them grew stronger, he realized that there was no turning back. Zara had been preparing for their journey in secret, even though she had insisted that they would need to move quickly. The moment she felt strong enough to stand, she began working on a plan to get them to her home planet. She explained that it would take a special kind of ship, one that could travel faster than anything they had on Earth. Luckily, she had access to just that kind of ship. Ethan had a hard time believing it. How could something like that exist? He'd never seen a ship like what Zara described, something capable of bending the very fabric of space, capable of traveling across galaxies in a blink of an eye. Yet Zara seemed confident. She was sure that if they got to her ship, they could begin their journey. The day they left, Maya was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. She had never imagined that her dream of space travel would come true, and now it was happening. She couldn't wait to see the stars, to leave Earth behind and explore new worlds. Ethan, on the other hand, felt a knot in his stomach. Was excited for Maya? Yes, but also fearful of what lay ahead. What kind of world was Zara bringing them to? What dangers would they face on their way there? The journey began quietly. They left in the dead of night when the world was asleep. To avoid drawing attention, Zara led them through the nearby woods to a secluded area where, hidden behind trees, was a small, unassuming craft. Ethan was stunned. It didn't look like anything from Earth. The ship was sleek, metallic, and covered in strange symbols that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. "This is my ship," Zara said, her voice full of pride. "It is not like the ships you have on Earth, but it will get us where we need to go." Maya's eyes widened in awe as she ran her fingers over the smooth surface of the ship. "It's amazing. It looks like something from a movie." Ethan stepped closer, still not fully able to believe what he was seeing. "How does it work? How can this little thing travel so far?" Zara smiled. "It's not the size that matters. It's the technology. This ship uses a form of energy you cannot yet understand. It bends space, allowing us to travel from one place to another without ever crossing the space in between." Ethan didn't fully understand, but he wasn't about to argue. He just wanted to get to Zara's home planet and make sure Maya stayed safe. He had made the decision to trust her, and now they were on this journey together. Zara helped them all get settled in the ship, showing them the basic controls and how to strap in for the ride. Maya was excited, but Ethan could see the uncertainty. In her eyes, this was all new to her too. She was going to a new world, but she didn't fully know what to expect. As much as she loved the idea of traveling to the stars, she was still a little scared. Ethan noticed his own unease, but he tried to reassure Maya. "Don't worry. We'll be all right," he said, though he wasn't so sure himself. With everything ready, Zara activated the ship's engines. Ethan felt the entire craft hum beneath him, the sound of the engines vibrating through the floor, and then, in an instant, they were off. Maya gasped in excitement as the world outside the windows blurred into a streak of stars. The ship wasn't moving like any vehicle Ethan had ever been in. It didn't feel like they were accelerating, yet the world around them was changing so quickly that it seemed as if they were bending space itself. "Where are we going first?" Maya asked, her voice full of wonder as she gazed out the window. Zara looked back at her with a soft smile. "We will travel through a star system near the edge of the galaxy. From there, we'll enter a wormhole that will take us to my home." "Planet? A wormhole?" Ethan asked, surprised. "That sounds dangerous." Zara nodded. "Wormholes are not something to be taken lightly. But if we are careful, we will be able to pass through without harm. I have been through many in my lifetime." Ethan swallowed hard. The thought of traveling through something so unstable scared him, but he trusted Zara. If she said it was safe, he had no reason not to believe her. As the ship soared through space, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange sense of wonder. They were no longer on Earth. They were now part of something much bigger, something far beyond what Ethan had ever imagined. Maya was already lost in her excitement, staring out at the stars, asking Zara more questions about the universe and the different worlds they would pass. After what felt like hours, Zara began to prepare them for the wormhole. "We are approaching the point where we must enter the wormhole. Hold on tight, this will be a quick journey," she said, her tone serious. Maya, despite her excitement, seemed to sense the tension in the air. She looked at her dad, her eyes wide. "Hey, is it really safe, Dad?" Ethan smiled gently at her. "I think it will be. We're with Zara, and she knows what she's doing, and we'll be okay." Zara activated the ship's systems, and suddenly the stars outside began to warp, stretching and twisting in impossible ways. The ship shuddered as they neared the wormhole, the walls of space itself folding in on them. Ethan held his breath, feeling the tension in the air. He could see the swirling energy ahead of them, an endless tunnel of light, and then they were through. The ship jolted as they passed into the wormhole, and for a moment everything seemed to go dark. But then the light returned, and the stars outside the windows settled back into their usual positions. They had made it through. Maya gasped. That was incredible. We really did it. Ethan couldn't help but smile at her excitement. We did. They had crossed through the wormhole safely, but they weren't quite out of danger yet. Zara's mission was still far from over, and Ethan knew that whatever came next would change. The journey through the wormhole had been smooth, but the calm did not last long. As the ship came out of the twisting tunnel of light, they found themselves in a completely different part of the galaxy. The stars outside the windows were unfamiliar, and the space around them was dark, almost empty. It was a strange, unnerving silence that made Ethan's stomach twist with unease. Zara stood at the front of the ship, her eyes focused on the control panel. Her usual calm demeanor had returned, but Ethan could see the tension in her posture. He knew they were getting close to her homeworld, but the quiet was making him nervous. He had no idea what awaited them or what kind of dangers they might face. Maya, ever the curious one, pressed her face to the window. This place looks so ... empty, she said softly. I thought there would be more stars. Zara turned her head to look at Maya, her expression softening. There are more stars, she said, her voice steady. We are approaching a system that is not yet fully mapped. It is ... isolated for now. Ethan didn't fully understand, but he nodded anyway. He was starting to realize that Zara's world was far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. She wasn't just an empress in need of help, she was a leader, carrying the weight of her entire empire on her shoulders. And now they were part of that weight. As they neared their destination, the ship began to pick up speed. Zara adjusted the controls, her eyes scanning the stars ahead of them. Ethan stayed close, watching her movements with curiosity. He had come to trust her. But there was still a part of him that worried about the unknowns ahead. Suddenly, the ship's systems beeped loudly, and Zara froze. Something's wrong, she muttered under her breath. Ethan felt his heart race. As the ship jolted slightly, "What's happening?" Zara's face darkened. "We've been detected. Someone knows we are here." Before Ethan could ask anything else, the ship was rocked again, this time harder. The sound of gunfire echoed through the walls and the lights flickered. "Get down!" "Duh!" Zara shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Ethan instinctively pulled Maya to the floor as the ship was hit again, sending them both sliding. The sudden blast was enough to make the walls shudder, and Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. This was no accident. Someone was attacking them. Zara moved swiftly to the controls, her hands flying over the buttons. "We have to get out of here. They are trying to disable the ship." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Who are they? Are these your enemies?" Zara nodded grimly. "Yes, they know I am returning to my people. Do not want me to succeed. I cannot afford to fail." Maya, her eyes wide with fear, looked up at Zara. "What can we do? How can we help?" Zara's expression softened as she looked at Maya. "Stay calm. Stay low. I will try to get us out of this." But just as she spoke, another blast rocked the ship, knocking them all off their feet. The lights flickered again, and the emergency alarms began to blare. Ethan scrambled to get up, his heart racing as he looked around. This was no longer a simple rescue mission. They were under attack. And it seemed like Zara's enemies would stop at nothing to prevent her from returning home. Suddenly, the ship's communication system beeped. Zara quickly activated it, and a voice crackled through the speakers. "You think you can run, Zara? You're too weak to stop us. Your empire will fall, and so will you." Zara's face went pale as she listened to the voice, but she didn't speak. Ethan could see the fear in her eyes, but she remained composed. "Who is that?" Ethan asked, his voice urgent. Who's attacking us? Zara's hand tightened on the controls. It is my cousin Kalen. He was once loyal to me, but he betrayed our family. He wants power. He wants to rule. Ethan's mind raced. Your cousin? He's trying to stop you from going back? Zara nodded, as he wants to take my place. He's already begun aligning himself with the enemies of my people. Maya's eyes filled with concern. So, ... He's the one who's been trying to hurt you. Zara nodded again, her face hardening. Yes. Kalen believes that if he stops me, he will take control of the Empire. But he does not understand the consequences of what he is doing. Ethan could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't just a betrayal it was a fight for the future of an entire galaxy. Zara's enemies didn't just want to kill her. They wanted to destroy everything she had worked for. We have to do something, Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. We can't just sit here and let them destroy everything. Zara turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. You are right, but there is nothing you can do. Must face them. I have no choice. Ethan shook his head. I'm not just going to stand by while they try to hurt you. You've helped us now. It's time for us to help you. Zara's expression softened, but she didn't argue. She knew Ethan was right. They couldn't just run anymore. The fight was inevitable. We have to fight, Zara said quietly. And we have to win. The ship shook again, this time with more force, but Zara quickly regained control. Prepare yourselves, she said, her voice steady but full of purpose. We are about to make our stand. Maya squeezed Ethan's hand, her face filled with both fear and excitement. Dad, we can do this, right? Ethan looked down at her, his heart swelling with pride. Yes, we can. The ship was still under attack, but Ethan knew one thing for sure. They had come too far to turn back now. Together, they would face whatever danger lay ahead, and no matter what, they would. The ship rocked again, this time with more force. Ethan could feel the vibrations running through the walls as the alarms blared. He tightened his grip on the safety strap, his heart racing as he glanced at Maya, who was looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. Hold on, Maya, Ethan said, trying to sound calm, though his own nerves were starting to show. We're going to get through this. Maya nodded, her small fingers gripping the seat. I'm scared, Dad. I know, Ethan said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. But we've got each other, and we're going to make it out. Zara was at the front of the ship, her eyes scanning the control panel. Her fingers were moving quickly, adjusting the ship's shields to withstand the attacks. She glanced back at them, her expression serious. We're close to the edge of the system. If we can hold on for just a little longer, we can escape. Ethan could see the strain in her face. She was trying her best to stay calm, but he knew. The situation was dire. This wasn't just about her safety anymore. It was about the future of her empire, the lives of countless people she had sworn to protect. Suddenly, the voice of Kalen crackled through the speakers again, this time louder and more filled with anger. You think you can escape me, Zara? You are weak. You always were. The galaxy will bow to me, not you. Zara's hands clenched on the controls. I will never let you destroy my people, she muttered, her voice low but filled with determination. The ship shook once more as another blast hit, and this time the lights flickered. Maya gasped, clutching the armrest. Dad, what's happening? We're still under attack, Ethan said, his voice tense. Stay low. We need to trust Zara. Zara turned back to them, her eyes flashing with resolve. I have to fight. Back now. Stay ready. Without waiting for a response, she pressed a series of buttons, and the ship's engines roared to life. A bright flash of light appeared outside the window. The ship shot forward, breaking through the surrounding debris at incredible speed. The attack from Kellen's forces was getting closer, but Zara wasn't backing down. Ethan could feel the rush of speed as they sped through the stars. But the loud thuds and the constant shaking of the ship reminded him that they weren't safe yet. Zara was maneuvering the ship skillfully, dodging incoming fire. But it was clear that the battle was far from over. We're getting close to the planet, Zara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Once we're within range, I can activate the defense systems, and we'll be able to protect ourselves long enough to land." Maya turned to Zara, her eyes full of curiosity but also fear. "How can you fight him? He's your family." Zara's expression softened for a moment, but her gaze quickly turned serious again. "He was family, but the moment he chose power over loyalty, he became my enemy." Ethan watched as Zara guided the ship through the battlefield with precision. He had never seen anyone handle such a situation with such control. But deep down, he knew they were running out of time. Kellen's forces were relentless, and if they didn't get to the planet soon, there might not be anything left to save. Suddenly, the ship jolted again, and this time, the force was stronger than before. Ethan heard the sound of metal creaking, and the lights flickered one last time before everything went dark. Maya screamed as the ship spun out of control. Ethan reached out, grabbing onto her to keep her steady. We're okay, he repeated, even though he wasn't sure. But then, just as quickly as it had started, the ship settled back into place. The emergency lights flickered on, and the sound of the engines returned to normal. Zara's voice echoed through the ship. "We're going to make it," she said, her voice determined. "We've breached the planet's atmosphere. Hold on." Ethan didn't have time to respond. The ship was rapidly descending, the ground below them coming closer and closer. He could feel his pulse racing. His focus remained on Maya. She was still holding his hand tightly, her face pale but hopeful. The ship plunged through the sky, weaving through the clouds. Ethan looked out the window, his heart in his throat. As the surface of the planet appeared below them, the landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen. Forests of strange, towering trees, vast stretches of glowing rivers, and mountains that seemed to touch the sky. But there was no time to marvel at the beauty. The ship was still under fire from Kellen's forces, and Zara was doing everything she could to protect them as they neared the surface. "Brace for impact," Zara shouted. Before Ethan could even process the warning, the ship's landing gear hit the ground with a heavy thud. The ship skidded across the terrain, and Ethan held on to Maya as they both slid forward.
Else.
The ship came to a sudden stop, throwing them both forward. For a moment, everything was still. Ethan was the first to move. His hands were shaking as he checked on Maya. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky. Maya blinked, looking around the cabin. "I think so," she said, her voice trembling. "What about you?" "I'm fine," Ethan replied, still trying to catch his breath. Zara was already out of her seat, her eyes scanning the outside. "We've made it," she said, her voice filled with relief, "but we are not safe yet. We must move quickly." Ethan nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation settle in. They were on Zara's home planet, but they were far from out of danger. Kellen's forces were still out there, and they had to act fast if they were going to survive. "We need to go," Zara urged. "Follow me." Ethan looked at Maya one last time, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. Together they followed, Zara out of the ship, ready to face whatever awaited them on this strange alien